The biggest buzz heading into AirVenture was the FAA's notice of proposed rulemaking that changes the world for light sport. We're going to talk about MOSAIC
in the hangar.
Hello, welcome to this episode of In the Hangar. We're on location, and I'm Dan Milliken.
I'm Christy Wong here at the Flying Eyes booth,
where if you use our discount code at flyingeyesoptics.com, you get 10% off. Taking off all caps, one word, use that code. And also Clemens Insurance. Jerry has saved me a lot of money on my own aircraft and my CFI insurance.
Absolutely, but the big buzz around AirVenture this year?
MOSAIC. So, guys, I have with us, we've got the EAA represented with Sean. We've got the president of Vans, Ryan Johnson. Thank you guys for coming. MOSAIC, what is it?
Well, first and foremost, thanks for having us here.
Yo, you bet.
Welcome to the greatest aviation event on the planet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
MOSAIC is big news for
Yeah.
all of general aviation. It's been a long rule in the making, and we are so excited to see it finally come across that finish line and become a proposal that's now out for public comment in the very final stages of the rulemaking process. And what is it? It's the expansion of light sport aircraft. You know, EAA was the champion of light sport aircraft all the way back in 2003 and 2004 when the very first iteration of light sport aircraft and sport pilot hit the industry. And now we have, all these years later, a lot of really solid data that's shown this works and is good for aviation. And over the past 10 years, Ryan and Vans and EAA and several within the industry have been working on and working with the FAA expanding that. And EAA as the lead for MOSAIC, the expansion of light sport aircraft, couldn't be happier that we have actually seen now the final rule, the proposed rule that will ultimately become final in about 16 months to 24 months.
That's a long time.
Out on the street.
Yeah. I remember when I was a student pilot, one of the questions I had was, wow, a Cessna 150, wouldn't that be considered a light sport aircraft? And I learned at the time it wasn't, but under this new rule, it would, correct?
Yeah, it will. I'm going to let Ryan walk through the specifics with your audience of exactly how the parameters of LSA work, because there's some fundamental changes in the definition of light sport aircraft that are very, very good. We have some work to do yet on a few of the specific parameters, but that's what the comment period is for, and we will be doing so. But Ryan, why don't you tell the audience exactly what LSA is looking forward?
Sure. I think we should start back with the 150 or the 152. It's a great example of an airplane that, even if it was light sport, doesn't have enough weight capacity currently, as it would have fit in the 1320 pounds that we had before in the 120 knots. It didn't have that capacity to carry, two modern individuals. And it's the reality of it that you put two people in any of those airplanes from the 1950s, and you can't even put in full fuel. So that was one thing that was looked at. Also, the light sport airplanes that we had, they just didn't have the robustness. And one of the major drivers of the modern MOSAIC is to get more airplanes into flight schools that have modern technology, that have more robustness, even than a Cessna 150. They can take the impact loads, and they have more capability overall. To bring that modern technology, that's huge. You go out on a flight line now and a student sees an old six-pack. And in modern airplanes, they're going to see an EFIS. They're going to see extra safety equipment that we're looking to bring into aviation at this level that we feel will progress throughout aviation and make these airplanes even safer.
And what Ryan just described is not going to only impact private ownership and lower to some degree lower costs of ownership, which is huge for EAA. It's also going to affect the flight training industry.
Absolutely.
We're going to see modern, effective, four-place training aircraft that fall under this new category and will hopefully revolutionize and modernize the flight training industry from a fleet acquisition and fleet type standpoint.
So let's talk about what is this going to do to the definition of the light sport and how it's going to affect light sport pilots.
Sure. Well, Sean can answer the pilot side, but at least from the aircraft side, there's no weight limit any longer on the rule. As currently written, we're in the NPRM, Notice for Proposed Rulemaking. There's a 90-day comment period we're going through now, so this can all change. But there's no weight restriction. We have a VSAV-H, or the max level speed with full continuous power of 250 knots. So they're looking to the future with future power plants. You can put any power plant in this aircraft except for a rocket currently.
Right.
So it's very future forward facing.
I mean, we're talking like 182s. We're talking Bonanzas. We're talking.
So that's one element of it that's very good, no question. And that is now as the new definition comes out, what are the legacy aircraft that will meet those parameters and allow a sport pilot to fly it? And you're absolutely right. As defined with the proposal, a 182 would fall into that category. A 172 would fall into that category. There's a few aircraft that are missed that we think, again, with the comment period and getting the right feedback with a strong safety case behind that feedback, that we will hopefully help the FAA make those adjustments and get the widest possible parameters of what makes sense to have in this category. But no question, there's some exciting aircraft that will be, for a sport pilot, eligible as soon as this rule becomes final, eligible to fly, including the aircraft like you just described and mentioned, the 182, 172, a 180 horse Piper Comanche, because now you can do things that, or fly things as a sport pilot that have constant speed propellers and retractable gear, with proper training and an instructor endorsement, just like a private pilot, right?
Right.
You now will be able to pursue those kinds of aircraft as well. And that's from a sport pilot perspective. Nothing has changed from the sport pilot definitions and requirements and training, other than the fact that you can now get these additional endorsements to fly these additional aspects for those aircraft that have it. But the definition change and the new broader category of what is considered a light sport aircraft will greatly enhance the ability for sport pilots to get into those types of aircraft.
What will be the limitations still imposed on light sport pilots?
There will still be, again, all of the current limitations still exist, so with a few exceptions.
Okay.
Things like not over 10,000 feet MSL altitude,
Okay.
not over 2,000 AGL in mountainous terrain. You can still only carry one passenger, but with the definition change for light sport, you could fly something that has 4 seats. You can just only have 2 occupants in that aircraft, so 1 passenger and the sport pilot. So you have to look at it correctly and
Okay.
look at it carefully and realize that for the most part, the sport pilot privileges are still the same. Again, with the exception of night, now sport pilots that hold either a basic med certificate or a third-class medical will be able to fly at night now.
Okay.
So with the proper endorsement and training, all good things for general aviation.
All right, so you mentioned a lot of good things, but you mentioned also that there were some things that you would like to see during the comment period put in. What specifically are some of those things?
Well, looking at it from an aircraft designer's standpoint, there's a few things. Maybe I'll mention a couple of benefits and come back to that. IFR is currently, we're writing the standards for IFR. So if you look at this from a standpoint of designing an airplane and its marketability, having an airplane that just goes into a flight school that can't, only is the first few hours is not that marketable, but when it carry you all the way through the IFR certificate, and you're flying the same airplane when you're taking that check ride that you started out with, that's big. We're also allowing aerobatics, so we're writing the standard for that. Now, that was allowed worldwide under light sport, but not in the United States before.
Wow.
So everybody else could do it except for the U.S. under the light sport
there were
certificate?
certain restrictions.
Okay,
right?
okay.
So there's exciting things that give marketability, but let's take a step back and what are those things that we're concerned about? One is a noise restriction, and we're not concerned from that standpoint because we all care about noise, right? We don't.
Well, except
wanna have
Air Venture.
Air Venture.
But that's good noise.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
good
exactly.
noise. But in general, at your regular airport, we are concerned about noise. It's just how onerous, how high of a bar does it take to get there? If we had the same bar that's applied to the rest of aviation in the certified world, the cost of these airplanes is not going to come down. So what we've proposed is, and I've been working with Sean, we were both in DC together talking to the FAA. We proposed something that's just easy to calculate. Basic parameters. What makes the noise at our airport is a Cessna 206 that can, for 5 minutes, turn at 2850. And that propeller tip speed is right below the sonic barrier. That's okay in the FAR 23 world. Is that our level? We can calculate that. We can calculate tip speed. So let's say we set a tip speed. There could be other calculated parameters. So that's noise. We're looking at that. We definitely want it to be something simple and straightforward. The other side of the house, of course, is the elephant in the room is the stall speed. And I'm chairman of F-37. We're writing all the standards for how to design these airplanes. And we realize it's a challenge for the FAA to come up with where do we set this speed to create a safe product moving forward. And what we'd like to do is have the speed, but then also have built in there a future-proof or is accepted by consensus standard. We're already building these airplanes to consensus standards. So if we could do the heavy lifting in the consensus standard, is it 54 with safety devices and conventional flaps, and define that in the consensus standard. The consensus standard, there's still a check and balance, because when we come up with a standard, it's written with industry, we have people there from the flight training industry, users, manufacturers, and the FAA and other foreign CAAs sit there on the committee, and we all come up to a common standard. But at the end of the day, FAA legal has to accept that standard. So it's a safe means of coming up with the way to come out with the speed. Of course, the lowest bar, Sean and I will be working together to come up with a recommended speed that everybody can submit to the docket, the same answer. Back to you, Sean.
Yeah, and I think it's important to look at it from the 10,000-foot view. Pardon the pun with the limitation.
I like it.
As a sport pilot, 10,000 feet.
You can, yeah.
The reality is the FAA over the last decade or more has developed something they call the risk continuum. And it's essentially a curved arc that places various elements of aviation. Obviously, Part 25 and 121 air carriers are at the highest point as far as how important it is to have the absolute lowest or minimum risk, right? Passenger carrying operations, very, very important that you minimize risk and have that done to the highest degree. As you go down the risk continuum to the lower operations that should be right-sized as far as the application of rules and restrictions. If you look at where Part 23 is, which is the long-standing set of rules that govern standard category type certification for general aviation, aircraft that are used for Part 135, et cetera. And then as you go further down, that's where you get to light sport, amateur built, and then ultimately the bottom is kind of ultralights, right? And they all have their place on this continuum. I think we can develop our comments back to this proposal in such a way that helps the FAA understand why they might have missed certain aspects, and they didn't miss much. This is a 90% well done thank you rule as proposed, but these few items that we can help them understand, maybe if you adjusted it just a certain amount, X let's say, we're still working on what that might be, you'll better fit it to where it is on that risk continuum. And here's the safety case and the data that supports why it needs to be there. So stall speed's a great example. We can provide that feedback, we can provide the safety case for that feedback and the data that supports it to show them if you make this adjustment, you'll have it right on the mark. And that's what we'll be doing over the next 90 days as this comment period comes to a close 90 days from the 23rd of July, Monday, when it first became commentable on the FAA docket or federal docket.
Where did the term MOSAIC come from?
Well, I'll give credit to the FAA for that. When we started this dialogue back in 2013, it began with a meeting that
10 years ago. Wow.
That Jack Pelton and I had in 2013 at the Small Airplane Directorate with the then manager of the Small Airplane Directorate. And we spent a half a day brainstorming how might we enhance general aviation and really leverage the benefits of what we know exists today in the light sport aircraft and sport pilot world. That's where it started, and there were also, coincidentally, having internal discussions along the same lines within FAA's aircraft certification and flight standards, and we continued to move that idea, that concept, what then became a strategy, and every year at our FAA Winter Summit that EA holds in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, as well as here at the greatest aviation event in the world, AirVenture, we continue to develop the thoughts and the dialogue until it became a true proposal for how do we draft this into an actual rule. And it almost died not once but twice.
Wow.
And last year, a great example, it showed up on our doorstep of AirVenture with us being told this rule is probably, this proposed rule is probably not going to make it. It's dead at this point, and they're considering shelving it. And we worked our tails off, and I mean everybody. Vance played a role, EAA led the effort. We worked throughout the week of AirVenture to show them through this wonderful community that's here for a week and the breadth and depth of why this will be so impactful. And by Thursday at the Meet the Administrator session, the then acting FAA Administrator, Billy Nolan, announced we will have a proposed rule by next August.
Wow.
And the rule came out. Beat it, July 23rd.
Amazing. With the proposed rule, I'm not sure, I don't understand how the red tape works. Is it pretty much now that we will get this rule by the end of the time period, or is there a chance it could be killed still?
There's a very minimal, there are a few examples throughout history of rules that either substantially changed or didn't make it to the final stage, but few and far between. And they have invested tremendous time, tremendous resources, and a dedicated FAA team that crafted this. It's gone through all the gauntlets already of the different lines of business, including legal, and over across the street to Office of Management and Budget and OST, all the different federal agencies that have a hand in the federal rulemaking process have had a chance to look at this and provide input, and that's how it got to this stage. So this is a major hurdle. The NPRM stage is a major hurdle.
We've got past a major hurdle.
We have. Now, again, there's not a 100% guarantee, but it's very, very likely. It's just now getting the comments right and getting the community fairly unified in what those comments need to be so that we don't flood the FAA with a bunch of scattered concepts that ultimately either stall or damage any significant part of this proposed rule.
So if the community wants to comment on this, where should they go to do that
and
appropriately?
what can they say?
Well, that's a great question. We are going to, as EAA, we are going to put out a specific email address in the next couple of weeks that will allow people that want to share their thoughts and share their comments with EAA so that we can, one, first and foremost, learn from those and consider how we can best incorporate those particular issues, those particular ideas. And then we as EAA will be putting out, obviously, a series of stories on our e-hotline and various EAA outlet, social media outlets, that sort of thing, to guide folks with the key points to be considering as they make their comments. We encourage everybody to comment to the docket. That's part of being part of general aviation. But we want to make sure they do so in an educated way and hopefully get everybody as closely aligned as we can so that then the FAA is hearing really a unified concern and a unified message of what the things need to be to make this final.
Awesome. If you share that with us, we can put that in the description.
Count on it. We'll definitely get it to you.
Perfect.
Definitely
And if we post this before that, we'll find we'll do a news story or something we'll help you get the word out.
Absolutely.
Ryan, what else is significant about MOSAIC?
There are things that have never been in the United States before. So if we look at helicopters,
Oh.
there's a lot of helicopters that you haven't been able to bring into the U.S. before. The standard that we're designing to isn't completely defined, and that's the FAA holding out a hand and saying, help us here.
Okay.
In the comment period, what should this really be? But we will have rotorcraft, it sounds like, and that's exciting. And when you take a fixed wing standard and rotorcraft standard, what do you get? You get eVTOL, right? You get the basis of eVTOL standards. So there's a few companies that are out there working on eVTOL, helping us at the committee level, already writing those standards. So when you think of a two-place eVTOL coming soon, I could give many names out there, but that's exciting that electric eVTOLs, we have a pathway for those to get into the market. Going down further, I think something that's exciting, because we're here where a lot of home builts are, where that's how EAA started. Of course, they're much broader than that now. But ELSA aircraft. So you can build your aircraft as an ELSA, and there's no 51% rule. Now, EAB will still be the same if you want to experiment, but if you build it as specified by the manufacturer, we can do a lot more for you as a manufacturer. And you come out of that with a maintenance manual, production acceptance procedure, which tells you how to do the first flight, along with the EAA manual for doing that. And then the last manuals are the POH and the FTS. So to have experimental airplanes that have that level of safety and defined systems, like Sean was saying on the safety continuum, that's exciting. And then there's the fact that the airlines are taking A&P mechanics now. We're
Yes,
an A&P mechanic.
yes.
Big
So
issue.
under this rule, at least for a lot of the maintenance, you can go take a class, and even for these airplanes in the expanded part of MOSAIC that are built under that.
So a 172?
Well, not a 172 because
Okay.
it was certificated as a type certificated
Okay.
airplane.
So
But
we're
a
still
Cessna-
talking experimental.
Yeah,
Or light sport.
Or light sport.
light
New
sport.
production light sport aircraft will also
Now you
have
can
this
do
benefit.
the condition inspection and that kind of
Right.
stuff.
Any airplane we release certified under this, you'll be able to take a class and then do a significant amount of the maintenance yourself.
Wow.
And that's transferable. Before, you had a repairman certificate if you built an airplane, and you still do under EAB. But if somebody else buys your airplane, now those manuals go with it, as well as you can take a class and come up to speed on the safety level aspect.
And I want to give the FAA some serious credit here, too. As you read this proposal, they really were forward thinking. As Ryan mentioned earlier, some of the things that they very purposely did not limit or constrain with
Such as
overly
weight.
prescriptive, like weight, and also number of power plants. Well, you think, well, I'm not going to have a multi-engine light sport aircraft, and that's probably correct. But guess what?
eVTOL.
Exactly.
Now you got 16
Ah.
rotors.
Exactly. You could have multi-propulsion systems set up that who knows what the future holds.
Yeah, exactly.
And they were very thoughtful as they drafted this proposed rule to make sure that we are not inhibiting or limiting those kinds of innovations.
Wow. I mean, we rag on the FAA quite a bit in the GA world, so hats off to them.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Absolutely correct. Hats off
Credit
to them.
where
This
credit
was,
is
this was a
due.
dedicated team that worked really hard.
All right, well, I love the idea that now rotor gets expanded and everything else. So does that mean, Ryan, we'll see a Vans RV helicopter?
It's the RV-16.
The RV-16?
I remember being here a couple years ago at Oshkosh, and of course, you attract all the best airplanes here at this show. It's the world's biggest show. And Blackfly was
Yep.
there, and Van
Yeah.
said, well, why don't we have one of those yet? And well, we only have so much time in the day, and our focus is still on the conventional airplane market.
Right.
But we are working with those folks. I have talked with a couple of those companies. It's exciting to see.
Yeah, it is.
It's a different mission statement, right? And that's why, as manufacturers, we come here and we're all friends across the industry. We work together, as well as in the consensus standards. We have a common goal, and it's exciting to see it go forward.
Well, this is great news.
This is
I'm
going to
excited.
revolutionize. It's going to completely change the GA
It's going to
world.
fix a lot of the big problems, from shortage of AMPs to the expense of training and everything. Wow, this is great.
Have you had a delay on any of your flights lately, throughout the country?
Yes.
Okay, there's the answer. And I've had, I don't know how many delays in the last year at airports. We need more pilots. And I want to give a shout out to Lirio Liu, who really, she's the head of aircraft cert. She only came in a little over a year ago, and she has really guided this rule to the finish line.
Wow.
And her main objective is to get these into flight schools so we can have more pilots
Yep.
come into the industry and replace that problem.
So I'd add to what Ryan just said about Lirio. She really did. She was the absolute spark plug within the agency. But it started here. It started with her visit to AirVenture last year, as well as the whole FAA senior team, and having the exposure to companies like Vans and others that really enabled them to go, wow, this is important. We don't dare shelve this. We need to find a way to get this across the finish
This
line.
is amazing.
All right, closing thoughts, Ryan.
We have a lot of work to do in the comment period, but I think we were surprised how close we were when this NPR came out to what we really need as a flying community. I think a lot of people don't realize how this will impact them. Bringing the cost down of airplanes that you could buy after you have your private pilot or light sport certificate, and increasing the ability for just a regular student. There's only so many slots at the large flight schools, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the mom and pop flight schools that now can buy an airplane with excellent technology, with a weight capacity and everything you need in a modern airplane, and bring in students that are at a disadvantage. We want to bring the rate per hour at a flight school down, and I think we have a great opportunity to do that. Just aviation wide, we have a great opportunity here. Let's not miss it. Let's push this forward to the finish.
Sean?
I'll just add everything Ryan just said, which I completely agree with all of those comments, is that, let's face it, flight training and affordable aviation is the lifeblood of general aviation in the United States. It's what sets us apart from any other aviation system in the world. You know, if you go and fly in Europe, for example, you see a very different atmosphere and the ability to pursue a passion of aviation. We are so fortunate in this country to have what we have. It's ours not only to protect, but find significant ways to evolve it and grow it. And this is one of the most significant things to come into GA in decades.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Well, guys, thanks for coming on and sharing the finer points of MOSAIC with us.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you guys for watching, and don't forget, we are supported. We are able to bring this to you by our sponsors like MPS, Marshall Protective Services. We've got Z-Vision, the brightest landing taxi lights. 67 Designs, the best camera mounts and phone mounts that you can get for your cockpit. And Colton Mortgage, coltontakingoff.com for your residential mortgage. So, guys, MOSAIC, it's exciting. Can't wait to see the future.
If you guys want to see me jump out of an airplane, subscribe to our channel. When I hit 100,000 subscribers,
you're going to do it.
When we hit 100,000 subscribers, apparently Dan's pushing me out of an airplane. So make sure you do that. And comment below if you guys want to know more about MOSAIC.
Yeah, and look for probably a follow-up video in which we'll give you the links that EAA is sending that would really help. So spread the word. GA is going to look even better.
We'll see you all next time.
In the hangar.
I am so distracted by the airplanes.
Yeah.
And the helicopters.